It's been a rather shameful week for England this week. You've probably seen in the news wherever you are that there have been large-scale riots for much of last week. And some countries have been very rude about it, in fact. China, Russia, Iraq, some of the Middle Eastern countries have taken it as an opportunity to sort of laugh, basically, and be scornful about what has happened in our country. It started when a known criminal and quite high-powered drug dealer was killed by armed police not last Thursday, but the Thursday before, I believe. And what happened was he was killed. Now, originally there was talk that he had opened fire on police, and they had, of course, retaliated, killing him. And that came from the fact that there was found to be a bullet lodged in the radio of one of the police people who were at the scene. Unfortunately, the Independent Police Complaints Commission has said that the bullet that was found in the lodged in the police radio was in fact a police issue bullet from another police officer, probably at the scene. So it looks like he did not fire on police officers first. He was found in possession of a replica gun which had been modified to be able to fire live rounds. I think that although this particular unit was the same unit involved in the Charles Menzies killing in London back in 2005, where they lied to cover up their trails and were never really brought to justice, although an inquiry found there had been severe problems, I think that they are probably justified in what they did. Unfortunately, that started a protest from the people on that estate, which eventually turned into a bit of a riot. And that was the Tottenham riot last week, well, the week before last, on the Friday. That was the extent, really, of the connection between the riots and the killing of Mark Duggan. It was then seen as a bit of an excuse after that to just go out and riot. And I think about 12 different parts of London, about 3 different parts of Birmingham, Bristol, Wolverhampton, Leeds, Nottingham, Derby, Gloucester, a lot of the main cities in England saw over the following week riots. Now, these riots were made up of a special group of people. They weren't the people who were at all connected to what had happened to Mark Duggan. They were gangs of juveniles, and when I mean juveniles, I mean between about the ages of 10, say, and 17. So they're all minors, and what they were doing was they were burning places, burning bins, burning cars, burning buildings, and they were throwing bricks and articles at police, riot police, and they were breaking into shops and looting. Now, some of the looting happened from people who were slightly older, I think, again, taking advantage of the fact that it was a free-for-all. Now, government has been in recess because they go on holiday during the summer period, a little bit like school children. They have about some stupid amount of time off on holiday. The Prime Minister was away on holiday abroad. He didn't come back on the first day. He decided he would come back on the second day when it repeated itself and it started spreading further up the country. The third day he decided that Parliament should be recalled, and Parliament sat down on the fourth day after it had been said that the police were getting to the end of their tether and considering using rubber bullets, and the government was considering imposing martial law, handing over authority, that is, to the British Army to keep control in some of the places in England, and they imposed a stupid number. I think it was 14,000 police officers onto the streets of London, and although that held that night in London, of course the rioting elsewhere continued, and then I think the next day people just got bored and stopped. Straight away there were people that were blaming the police for not being there. And the police's response was, look, we have two different protocols, a protocol for protests and a protocol for criminality. We thought these riots were protests. We didn't realise that the main problem was going to be looting. And it's not up to the people on the ground to make the sensible decision and stop lawbreakers from looting if they're in under a different protocol. The Met also, of course, are blaming the fact that the government has put in austerity cuts, and that's cut the police force, and how are they supposed to enforce the law if there's less of them because of the government? And of course the government is saying it has nothing to do with the cuts, it's to do with racism, and it's to do with the protests from the original Mark Duggan shooting, and it's because people are just unhappy and we have a problem with the youth, and that's the courts have been working overtime, you know, all the way through the night to prosecute people without their parents present, people as young as 11 years old, and they're only really getting a slap on the wrist, because what can you do with somebody that's 11 years old? It went on way too long. It went on way too long, and I think what they ought to have done was given the police powers very, very quickly to work under the protocol of, it's obviously criminality when they're burning buildings. I don't know why they need to take two days to realise that. People on the ground need to make the decisions. I think the second thing is that the government really ought to have imposed martial law. I know that that hasn't been done since the Cromwellian Protectorate about 400 years ago. But I do think that bringing in the army, even if they didn't do anything, just their mere presence would probably have deterred vandalism, and it would have deterred the looting. As for the looters and the protesters, who are all children, I say prosecute the parents. It's very, very simple. What children are allowed out on the streets at about 10 or 11 o'clock at night when they're underage? And you have to ask, where are the parents? And congratulations to all those borough councils who are saying, you know, if you're convicted of riots as a child, the parents and the children are evicted from council homes and their benefits cut. Good, because that is basically what they deserve. The problem with this country is it just does not have a good justice system. It needs a full overhaul of the justice system, of the crime and punishments, and it needs to start implementing a bit of heavy-handedness, because at the moment they're thinking we can riot and we can loot, and all we're going to do is get hauled in front of a judge who's going to tell us we're naughty, and if we're lucky we might get locked up in a juvenile detention centre where we don't need to pay rent, we don't need to pay taxes, where all our meals are balanced and given to us free, where we can play Xboxes at the taxpayer's expense. It's ridiculous. There is a lot wrong with this country, and that last week shows basically all the bad bits about this country, how far it's gone. So there we are, the riots are over, everybody is incredibly embarrassed. The government, which have resat now, have nothing better to do, so I suppose they had better go back on their back on their jollies. The banks are, for the people who were unfortunate enough to lose their home, are not prepared to put off mortgage repayments for a month or two, even though there's only really about 100 of them who have lost their homes, because they are greedy even after we have bailed them out, and continue to live in a financially unstable environment because of their greed. It's sickening. It really is very sickening. But there we are. That's basically all there is to it. It's one of those things that in a couple of weeks will be forgotten about, and I don't suppose anything will ever come of it. And that's sad. I think that's sad. I think we've lost a lot in this country, and I think you need a really strong, almost right-wing government for a bit to just to install a certain amount of almost fear in the youth that are willing to do this, because they are instilling fear everywhere else. And yes, there were people who died as a result of these riots. There was, one person who was shot. I think there were 2 people who were found stabbed, and there were 3 people who were killed in a hit and run trying to defend their own property, which of course is kind of against English law. We're not really supposed to defend our property with force. If we do, we are counted as a criminal as well. The police are supposed to help us with that. We pay taxes, council tax, for the police to do that. So you can excuse those in these affected areas who are pissed off at the fact they paid for the police to help them, and the police haven't managed to do it. Whose responsibility that is, it doesn't matter. It really is about retail. I suppose the buck stops with the government eventually, but they're far too interested in probably, keeping face so they don't lose support for whenever the next general election is, I suppose. Fragile, coalition government, blah, 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 blah. It's just a nightmare. It is just a nightmare. I think the only other thing to say about this week is that I had my annual car boot sale, which went actually really well, and I raised about £43, I think, something like that. And the fact that I'm trying to downsize my birds in terms of getting rid of the Society Finches Trio and Rosie, which I bought as a breeding pair, and which have tried over and over again to breed, and are just producing, well, the only thing she can produce is scrambled eggs. I mean, it's just ridiculous. So I'm hoping to get rid of them within the next week or so, and then put Bonnie and Mike, the last Society Finch, together, see if they will breed. And that's really my video blog for this week.